Thank you all for joining me today for another episode of Tracy Takes On, the show that talks about all things political and our pressing issues. Today we have a very special guest, former presidential candidate for the Green Party, Mr. Howard Hawkins, and I will let him introduce himself. Sir, you may go ahead.
Well, thank you. Everybody calls me Howie.
Okay.
When I hear Howard, it reminds me when I was a little kid, and I had another nickname. They called me Buster. But when I heard Howard, I knew I was in trouble. So call me Howie. So
Okay,
I feel like I'm in trouble.
Okay. Well, you're not in trouble, so I'll call you Howie.
Yes, please. Well, just a little bit about me. I'm a retired Teamster and construction worker. I've been active in movements for peace, justice, labor, and the environment since the 1960s, and involved in the Green Party since we got started in 1984, and found myself running for president in 2020 because a lot of people asked me to, and we did the best we could. We got a little over 400,000 votes, which I think isn't bad when you look at the larger context. This was really a tough year. It was a referendum on Trump. And the way the system's set up, you can't vote for what you want without worrying about helping your worst enemy. So a lot of people that preferred what we were talking about, like Medicare for all, Fox News in the election did an exit poll, and they called it, in their biased way, government-run health insurance. Are you for it or against it? And they figured by phrasing it that way, most people would be against it. 79% of the people said they were for it. And we were running for that. And Biden and Trump were running against it. Yet they got all the votes. So that means we got a lot of changes we got to make, from healthcare to how we, cast votes. Instead of the Electoral College, do you realize today that the Electoral College elected Biden? It wasn't us, the people. If you're a voter in Wyoming, your vote counts 3.5 times more in the Electoral College than a voter in California. And if just a little over 42,000 votes had shifted in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia, Donald Trump would now be the president, even though he lost the popular vote by 7.1 million votes. So we had a lot of issues running for president. Unfortunately, the mass media just wanted to talk about Trump. Trump tweets, and if they're liberal media, they're outraged. If they're conservative media, they're cheerleaders. And we're just here at the grassroots, trying to get our voices heard.
Well, you pretty much addressed just about all the questions I wanted to ask you about. The first question, and I don't know how familiar you are with this show, but we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, defunding of the police, and how the phrasing of former President Obama, we definitely disagreed with that. And we didn't understand why he framed it in the way he did. And I don't know if you're familiar with what he actually said. He said, you can't frame it as defund the police or you don't get what you want. How do you feel about, and I'm pretty sure I know, but how do you feel about the whole defunding of the police and how that should work?
Well, what should happen in a lot of cities is the police departments are bloated. They're militarized. And the cops don't know how to provide housing for the homeless. They only can give them a vagrancy ticket. Or healthcare for the addicted. All they know how to do is give them a criminal drug charge. Or if somebody's having a mental health breakdown, all they got to know is that gun they got. They don't know how to deal with people that are, acting out. So we send the cops to do things they shouldn't do. So the whole idea behind defund the police is, let's get the services we need funded. And, the other side of that, and this is where I kind of sympathize with Obama, because you say defund the police, and the average person thinks, oh, you want to get rid of the police altogether. But I live in a community where we have one of the highest rates of teenage shooting. And the people in this community are really upset with the police because they come into the community and they harass people for low-level offenses or even non-criminal behavior. They do stop and frisk. This is Syracuse, New York. They randomly stop mostly Black young men in their cars, search them, and If they can find anything on them, they bring them downtown. And they tend to do that toward the end of their shift because then they get that automatic overtime doing all the paperwork. And this police department is bleeding a stride. On the other hand, we got serious crimes. These shootings do hit people. There were 20 shots fired underneath my window a couple months ago. And the police showed up and they were shooting at a memorial service for somebody who had been murdered the weekend before. It was just half a block away. And nobody got hit. So the cops went around with their little flags where all the casings were and documented it all, did their paperwork. My light was on. I never got a knock on my door to ask me if I saw anything. In other words, and this is a statistic I know from the Vera Institute for Justice, they did a study a few years ago. 25% of the serious crimes that we expect the police to deal with, violent crimes like homicide, rape, assault, and serious property crimes like home burglaries and carjackings, they only arrest somebody in about 25% of those cases. The other 75% of people get away. And then, and this is the most shocking statistic, the victims of those crimes do not report them to the police 60% of the time. Because, you know, if you're at the scene of the crime and the cops are looking for suspects, even if you're the victim, they might think you were part of the crime. So people just don't even want to deal with the police because they don't trust them. So, you know, what that's why I've been calling for community control of the police. The cops are going to get away with these assaults and brutality and murder and even illegal rackets on the side, or even legal rackets like civil asset forfeiture, as long as they get the police themselves. We need police commissions either elected by the public or selected by lot like a jury that can hire and fire the chief, that can oversee the budgets and policies, and can discipline or investigate and discipline misconduct independently of the department. What we're getting now is mostly use of force reforms. Like, okay, we're not going to use chokeholds. That killed George Floyd. That killed Eric Garner down in New York City. That killed a guy named Johnny Gamich in 1995, who was from this neighborhood, was in Pittsburgh. His brother was playing football for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He got suffocated to death in a Pittsburgh suburb by the police. Well, in New York, they had a ban on chokeholds from 1993. Eric Garner was killed by a chokehold by a cop in 2013. And internal affairs in the NYPD never sanctioned that cop. That's why, to me, the key demand is community control. And, you know, with that, the community can decide how much do we want to put into conventional police to deal with these serious crimes and how much into social services to deal with the real problems. I mean, we tend to send the police because we're not solving the problems. And in the way these departments are set up, they're like supposed to contain the problems. And they tend to enforce them over, they call it over policing in low income and minority communities.
Yep, understandable. And I know another issue that you talked about so passionately, and let me just say this for my audience. I know you haven't had time to watch all my podcasts, but I have been spending weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, well before the election, talking about how I was going to vote for you when my candidate, my preferred candidate, dropped out. And I'm assuming that the ones of us that did vote for you did so because our candidate dropped out. How well do you align yourself with what we would term like the progressive Democrats? Are you close to what they believe ideology, or are you just independent no matter what happens?
Well, on specific policies like Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, tuition-free public college, student debt relief. There are a lot of issues where, you know, we're talking about Bernie Sanders, where we're on the same page. I might want to go a little further, a little faster than Bernie, but basically, you know, we can work those issues out. Where I disagree is I think he made a mistake going into the Democratic Party. This guy got elected 14 times running as an independent, to mayor of Burlington, Vermont, to the US Congress, to the US Senate. And then he went into the Democratic Party to run for president, and the establishment closed ranks against him. And they fronted him off. That was so clear in this last election. You know, over the weekend, suddenly all the candidates are dropping out to back Biden So it can't be Sanders. The lesson I draw from that is take these issues directly to the people. Don't try to go through the Democratic Party, which is so controlled by the corporate interests. They only want progressives there to make them look better than they are. They want progressives to make speeches, but the corporate Democrats get to make the decisions. So that's where I disagree. And Bernie understands that. His hero was Eugene Debs, who was real clear about being independent of the two big capitalist parties. And so I think that's, where we agree and where we disagree.
Understandable. I also was asking my group about questions to ask to you, and this is going to be a difficult one because I disagreed with the person, but I thought it was an excellent question. So the question that she wanted me to ask you is, it seems or it's perceived that the Green Party only shows up in presidential elections. What would you say to that person to say that that is not true and that the Green Party is actually doing the work that needs to be done?
Well, we're doing it. We ran over 200 candidates. Only 2 of us are on the presidential ticket. We elected at least 11, and I don't think we have a good count yet. We've elected over 1,200 people, almost all of them to local office, a couple to state legislatures over the years. We have over 100 elected officials right now. And in a lot of places, we are in the middle of fights around the issues outside the elections, from trying to stop fracking and these new pipelines and the fossil fuel infrastructure, to fighting. The 2 leaders of Black Lives Matter here in Syracuse are young Black women who are Greens. So we're all over the place on the issues. We're out there. I would just say we need to scale it up. Instead of electing hundreds, we should be electing thousands. And we can do that. There's 500,000 elected officers in this country. Most of them are local. And a lot of these officers have no competition. And because of gerrymandering, most districts are one-party districts. So if it's a Republican district, the Democrats don't try. If it's a Democratic district, the Republicans don't try. But if the Greens try, we can at least start out as the second party. And the thing we do is we bring issues. In these single party districts, most people become the candidate because they stood in line, they worked through the machine, and then they get designated. And they really don't have to campaign because everybody's going to vote for that party. So they don't even know how to campaign. They don't know how to deal with the issues. And those of us who are activists, and I've been at this for 55 years, almost. Yeah, 55 years. And I'm always, even to this day, a little bit surprised at how ignorant and lazy our elected officials are. There's serious issues and they haven't done their homework. And a lot of them, they got legislation and they haven't read it. They just sort of go with what the party leader says. So we can compete with these people. And I think, and the other thing you can do in a local election is you don't need a lot of money in media. You need to go out and knock on doors and talk to people. And a lot of people may not even know or understand the policies you're advocating, but they will respect the fact that you respected them and came and listened. You don't need to give them a big pitch. You really need to listen, because people feel so detached from the political system that they feel they have no influence. And just the fact that you came and listened to them and cared what they had to say means a lot to them, and you get a lot of those votes. So we can win those races.
Absolutely. So you brought up yet another issue I wanted to talk to you about is ballot access. So my whole rant, if that's what you want to call it, is that how I was done with the Democratic Party because they were actually suing in some states to keep not only the Green Party off the ballot, but other third parties off the ballots. And so I want to talk about with you is how important is that ballot access? And besides, here in Indiana, we have, I forget how many, we have a certain amount of petitions that we had to collect to get about a candidate on the ballot. Well, if we're being told that half of those candidates aren't even reliable, what's the point in going out to get those candidates in the first place? I know it, but I want you to talk about it.
Well, having a ballot line in most states really lowers the number of signatures you need to get on the ballot, or even eliminates the need to get signatures. So then you can go out and campaign with the voters. But I know Indiana, for example, it's one of the hardest states to get a presidential ticket on the ballot. In fact, the Green Party's been running since 1996. We've never succeeded in Indiana. And I know to run for Congress, I think Indiana has the highest number of signatures to run as an independent without a ballot line. It's over 40,000 signatures. You know, my state, it's 3,500, New York. That's more typical. It's thousands of signatures. Some states, it's tens of thousands, like Georgia and Alabama and Illinois and Indiana. You know, if you want to run as an independent for the House of Commons in the UK, 10 signatures. You want to run for the Parliament in Canada, it's 100 signatures. You want to run for Congress in India, the world's largest electoral democracy, 2 signatures. 2 signatures in New Zealand. It's 50 in Australia. But in this country, it's thousands or tens of thousands. So, you know, and then the Democrats try to suppress the Green Party. Think about that. Party suppression, I mean, that's what Putin does to people that he don't like, that wants to run for the Moscow City Council. He finds a problem with their petitions. That is about as authoritarian as you can get, because running for office is probably the fullest expression of our First Amendment rights to free speech, peaceable assembly, and petitioning the government for redress of grievances. And the Democrats are trying to, you know, they don't want us to compete with the vote, with them for votes, so they want to just suppress us. And, you know, that in itself, they're an anti-democratic party, not a Democratic party. Not that the Republicans are any better. I mean, they go to a lot of effort to suppress votes of people they don't think will vote for them. Black people, young people, students, and they purge rolls. They don't put enough polling places in those communities. They fuss around with photo ID or voter ID requirements. You know, that's despicable. But party suppression by the Democratic Party is a form of voter suppression. Because most people that vote for us wouldn't vote if we weren't on the ballot. We know from the exit polls from the 2016 election that 61% of Jill Stein's voters would have stayed home if she was not on the ballot. So we actually bring new voters to the polls. And when the Democrats knock us off the ballot, they're suppressing the vote just like the Republicans do.
Exactly. 2 more issues, and I said I was going to make these quick, and I'll make them quick. I would love for you to talk about what we can do as, I say third parties, because I'm putting all the third parties under one umbrella, and I realize that they're different. So besides talking to the voters, what else can third parties can do? And here's why I ask this. So when I talk to people about the issues, you're exactly right. They'll say, oh, I'm for government controlled healthcare. I'm for college free. But when it comes to voting for a third party candidate, going into the poll, I hear this: I want to vote for someone that can win. And I'm not sure myself, how can the third parties get over that hurdle, because I think it's a huge hurdle. I think that most people want what it is that we're advocating for, but they're not going into the polls and voting that way because they want to vote for, quote, the winner.
Well, at the local level, people are oftentimes more willing to vote for what they really want because the stakes are not as high as, say, in a presidential election or a congressional election. So that's why we win those races. We have a pretty good record running for local office. And then you get some people in local office, and then you run for state leg or the House of Representatives, and people are like, well, yeah, they can win because they have won. So I think that's a psychological barrier that we can overcome by getting some people elected in local elections to start. And then we got to push for electoral reform, particularly ranked choice voting. and ranked choice voting from multi-member districts for city council, state legislatures, and the House of Representatives. Because then you get proportional representation of each party in proportion to the support it has. And the Green Party right now, if you had a proportional voting system, we'd get at least 20, 30% of the vote and 20, 30% of the seats. And then once we're in the legislative process, we're a lot more legitimate. And I think, as you say, the people really like what we say. We're going to start getting more support. So now, ranked choice voting is an idea, I think, whose time has come. We just got it extended to 5 more cities in the state of Alaska in the election in November. That brings us to 38 cities and 2 states. And so I think we need to keep expanding it there and then start pushing for that at the federal level. There's a Fair Representation Act in Congress that would establish that for the House and Senate, where you'd have, ranked choice voting for multi-member districts, although the Senate, unless you have a special election, you're only going to have one person running, but it's still a ranked choice vote. And then for president, we could replace the Electoral College with a ranked choice national popular vote, which, as I pointed out at the top, it almost happened again. We almost had the loser, Donald Trump, get installed as the presidency by the Electoral College. Just 42,000 votes and a few more could have flipped it. And that's too close for comfort. He got beat pretty bad in the popular vote, but he could be president if, some people had, voted differently in just 3 states, a small number of people. We can't let that happen. That's, democracy is based on political equality. Everybody should have one equally weighted vote. And the Electoral College skews that. And, the Democrats, instead of going after the real problem, the Electoral College, which has cost them 2 presidencies and almost cost them this one, they focus on keeping the Green Party off the ballot. But I think we can find, this is a place where some of those progressive Democrats in Congress could be helpful. One of them needs to put a bill in to replace the Electoral College with a ranked choice national popular vote for president. And then more of them need to get behind that Fair Representation Act. And then we can support them.
Absolutely. And last one is March 26th, 27th, and 28th of 2021. There is a planning committee that I happen to be a part of. We are doing a national town hall on Medicare for All, which we did not get to tonight, and we would love to have you there.
I would love to be there because, we got good news. The Congressional Budget Office just released their study on the costs, and they found that the Medicare for All costs a lot less than the Affordable Care Act.
Okay.
Even before you add in the public subsidies of a public option. And they found that the administrative costs, it's administrative costs for the Medicare we got are 2%. For the private health insurance system, it's around 30%. So a lot of critics of Medicare for All were skeptical that you'd get those big savings in overhead because the costs are related to finding out, does this insurance plan cover the treatment we want to give? And then will the insurance company pay the price we want? And then they fight back and forth and the paper goes flying, and a lot of people spend a lot of time doing that. Well, this study found that the overhead costs for a single public payer national system would be 1.5%, even less than the Medicare we got. Because it's very simple. You have a single payer, you have a schedule of costs, and you get a service done, and you submit, the provider submits the bill, and Medicare for All pays it.
Absolutely. So I will definitely make sure to give you that information. Like I said, I didn't know how much time you had, and I did not want to be a pest and just keep asking questions. So I appreciate you taking the time this evening to speak to me, and have a great evening. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Have a great day.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for your patience. I just finished an awesome interview with Howard Hawkins, or well, he said call him Howie. So I'm going to call him Howie. And it went very, very well. So we have a new, not quite with the show yet, but she's filling in for Talisha, and her name is Maggie Cobbler. You cannot see Maggie's face today, audience. So just realize she is a real person, and you'll just see a phone screen for her, but she's absolutely real. So today has a lot of updates. The number one update, and Charles, I'll let you talk first on this, is Biden finally got the electoral college to vote for him. So it's 302 to 276. I think that's what Trump got, or 222. I forget what he got. So how do you feel about this vote finally coming after the Supreme Court said, okay, it's time for you to stop?
Well, I still don't think it's over. I don't know what he's up to. I see the AG Barr put in his resignation, so he'll be gone sometime between now and next Thursday. But, is the AG or deputy AG that he's selecting to fill that post, is he coming in here just to fill out the days until inauguration day, or is he coming in with an agenda? Because it seemed like, Trump was pushing to get the investigation out on Bill Barr. And I'm sorry, not Bill Barr, Hunter Biden. And you just don't know what he's up to. I mean, he's like a cornered dog, and that's when that dog is dangerous at his dangerous time, when he's cornered. So until they have a transfer of power on January the 20th, then, I'm not totally convinced that it's over and Trump has conceded, or unless he concedes sometime between now and then. So that's the way I feel about it.
Okay, and Maggie, what about you? Oh, go ahead.
First of all, I completely respect every point made, and I agree we really don't know. I kind of have a different take. I think Trump is going to walk out just normally, and all of this is really so he stays in the news, so he seems relevant, so he gets coverage, and most of all, so he sends a message to his base. They are loyal, if not utterly misguided, that he'd go to the mat for them, that he'd pull out all the stops. That is campaigning for 2020. And so I think it's somewhat problematic how we handle it, because on the one hand, we don't want to make the mistake we made in 15, 16, where we were inadvertently giving all kinds of free media, where it was an empty podium waiting for Trump, while Bernie Sanders had 27,000 at a rally and nobody was there to cover it, right? We inadvertently created a monster with a lot of the unearned or earned free media in any event. So I'm kind of thinking a lot of this is more a play to the base saying, hey, I'm here for you. I will fight for you. And as anti-Trump as I can be, I can see not a merit in Trump. I want to be very clear on this before it's misunderstood or misconstrued. But I can see, let me tell you how I would have felt if I'd seen some of that kind of push from true progressives in our party, or when Bernie in the primary, what we saw in 16, and we're like, okay, and we documented everything and we presented it to the attorneys, and here's what we're seeing with these double-digit exit poll discrepancies. Do you want to do something about it? And the decision was, no, it would be harmful. And I can respect that. I'm not complaining about that. I'm just saying those are the facts. And then we saw, when we had the lawsuit against, the DNC saying that we gave money to Sanders, believing that the DNC was going to be neutral as they suggested they were, and per their own rules. And during those proceedings, the issue was not litigated. This precise legal issue wasn't litigated, but we learned then that the DNC believes it is utterly within their rights that they, the party, as opposed to the people / the voters, have the right to select the nominee. The DNC is a private business. There's no such thing as a, quote, party, and that they could have gone into back rooms smoking cigars. And here's the interesting part, that even if the election, the primaries were rigged under a no harm, no foul, it wouldn't have mattered because it was their right to choose the nominee in any event. And now, again, I want to be very clear. That case didn't go forward. It wasn't granted the writ of certiorari from the Supremes, from SCOTUS. It wasn't heard, but there was a whole jurisdictional issue and a standing issue, legal technicalities why it didn't go anywhere. But the precise issue of does the DNC have a right to run a primary, knowing that the votes and our donations and our time and effort don't matter, that at the end of the day, they're going to do everything they can to manipulate so their preference, wink, wink, aligns with the people / voters' preference, but they don't even have to do any appearances. They can come right out and say, we select this nominee. And that, to me, having been through that, and then we watch what Trump is doing, I think there's a whole sort of sub rosa group of people that are kind of going, yeah, our elections need a kick in the backside. In my opinion, exhausting legal remedies. When it came out how it should. He lost, and was the proverbial laughed out of court. That's not a, quote, coup. And he said in interviews, I will leave, of course, and you know that. So I can't tell, I'm with you, man. I can't tell if he's playing us, playing the media, I know he's playing to his base, but I do not believe he's going to do anything other than walk out. But he has clearly, in my opinion, launched his 2024 campaign. And if we are not careful, we are going to end up, quote, air quotes here, campaigning for him. So I don't know what the answer is.
Let me take a different approach than both of you have taken. I think that
good.
January the 6th is a critical date. I think what's going to happen is that the Republican House of Representatives are not going to vote to certify the election. Now, of course, it won't matter because the Democrats outnumber the Republicans in the House. If they do the same thing in the Senate, which I'm pretty sure they will, then it's going to go back to the governors. And of course, all the governors in the state where Biden won, they're gonna say, yes, this election is right. You can't protest it. But here's what I think is gonna happen on January the 20th. I still say that the Secret Service is going to be escorting him out. It's either he does one or two things. Either he just leaves but doesn't stay anywhere near the 20th and he leaves office after the electorals vote against him. Because remember, he said, if the electorals don't vote for me, I'm going to leave office. So he'll either resign and get Pence to pardon him, or Secret Service will walk him out on the 20th. It's one of two things, in my opinion. I don't see any other thing besides one of those two happening. I would hope that he would attend the inauguration, but I know good and well he's not going to.
Well, I don't believe, on January the 6th, I think it'll be a formality. I don't think that 50 senators are gonna vote against Biden becoming the president. I don't think, it was like none of them signed that lawsuit that the 106 representatives from the House signed. So, all it's going to take is, it depends on the outcome of the Georgia election, because these senators will be seated immediately. But all they need is a couple of senators just to say no, Biden's the president, and it's a done deal. They might debate and talk about it, but I really don't think, that you're messing with democracy there. I think that that'd probably be the end of democracy as we know it if that happens. That somebody can just hijack the election away from the people's choice, and I just don't think America stand for that. So.
I didn't think America would stand for Trump, but somehow they said, you know what, 74 million people voted for him.
Right.
I'm like, I mean, I hope everything you're saying, it sounds logical, but that guy there, he takes logic and just says, he scoots it away. He doesn't do anything logical, he did everything you think he's gonna do, he does the opposite. And then you're like, well, wait a minute, what? I did want to talk about, and like I said, this show is probably going to be a little bit briefer because the president-elect is addressing the nation at 7:30. So I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. But I did want to talk about what's going to, I know we talked about the Georgia election last week, but Kelly Loeffler, Georgia senator, yeah, I know, Maggie, you're on the same team as I am with her. She accused Raphael Warnock of being far left. Now, what he was saying and the scripture he was quoting was, in my opinion, absolutely true. So I always want to know, one, what Bible are they reading, and how stupid do they think their supporters are who happen to be Christian? Because either they think their supporters never read the Bible, or they're just hoping to get somebody that just knows nothing. Because I'm like, he didn't misinterpret it. That's what the Bible actually says. And maybe that's just me and how I see it.
Well, I don't think that's the whole story of why she feels that he's gone far left. He's gone far left as far as she's concerned. Just as she's gone far right. They're trying to bring this back to the center. I mean, I don't understand why she's not under investigation for the security fraud, just like the same as.
Yeah, Purdue should be under investigation also.
Yeah, right. They
Right.
both of them should be in prison.
And others. There's others.
So, they want to bring this back to the center. That's why I said things need to be in the center. With Trump, it then gone far right, and people like Bernie, the social, because of all the social issues, that's considered far left. And the people in the middle just want to keep getting rich, keep getting richer and richer and richer on both sides of the aisle, the moderates. Those are the ones who want to keep getting richer and rich, and we keep electing them over and over, the court
I'm sorry.
backfired on Trump that he couldn't he stacked the court and all these judges are ruling against him, because they know what he's doing it's illegal. He should be up on charges of attempted voter suppression.
And he won't be, and that's the thing. He's got to feel like an idiot because he said, or someone asked him the question, did you put the Supreme Court Justice, I forget what her name is,
Amy Coney Barrett.
Thank you, Amy Coney Barrett. Did you put her in so that she would rule in your favor if this happens to be a close election. He tried to dabble around it, but basically he was answering yes to me. I'm like, stop. And then when Mike Pence turned around and asked Kamala Harris, oh, you're going to stack the courts. If that were me answering the question, I'd be like, yes, but you're already doing it. So what are you asking me that same question for? See, that's because I should not run for public office. But
I don't know.
to say something. I'm sorry, I did not mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, you didn't. I mean, it's all good comments here. How do we square the notion of moving it back to the center with the fact that when it came to actual policies, every single candidate that ran for Medicare for All or for a Green New Deal and actual people first oppression ending policies won their races? So to me, we're again in that kind of pickle where if we let the right define what far left is, I mean, if you look at Sanders, I use Sanders as a reference because the good senator, we're familiar with his positions. If you look at him ideologically and, economically and socially in abstraction, he's barely center. He's barely center. He doesn't have a bunch of state ownership. He has he's basically a social democrat and not even quite that, or an FDR Democrat. He may self-identify as a quote socialist, but the policies he's put forward, which have, some have 3/4 of the entire red and blue voting and independent American population support behind them. And we saw that with the apparent disconnect between areas where a $15 minimum wage won, and yet the person who was, opposing it lost. There were all kinds of things that showed us that there's becoming a schism between what constituents voters are saying, we want this, and what politicians are kind of going, what would look best for the party? It's like they're not hearing us quite, whether it's just a shift or not, or should we just embrace the fact that this is not about state ownership. This is about policies, universal, not means tested, a universal people first, oppression ending policies that give people true freedom because their health care is covered, because they've got a shot at a new job, because their job they have will pay a livable wage. Those kinds of things give freedom. They are not far left. They're basic freedoms is what they are. So I wonder, go ahead, Lovey.
What I was going to say, and I'm sorry to keep interrupting you. I did not mean to do that. And I was just talking to
You're fine.
about this. I specifically asked him, I said, how is it that we can get Americans thus that lean towards the progressive side? I think all three of us think that the healthcare system that we have currently is just awful bad and it stinks. I think we always say that what's the minimum wage? $7.25 or $7.75? I always forget what the federal minimum wage is, but we all think that.
I think it's $7.25, I think. Yeah.
We all think, hopefully, that should be raised. How do we, and I asked him this, I said, how do we get people to go in and vote for candidates at the, that are going to do that instead of just quote unquote voting for who we think is going to win? And he said something that just shocked me, and didn't shock me, and it was a great answer. He said, we need to start to talk to people. And I think he was talking about him as a politician. And I think that's an important thing, is those people that are running on those issues, they aren't far left. It's what most people want, but somehow the Republican Party, the king of branding things badly, has gotten away with saying, oh, that's too far left. Well, then that means that 79% of the entire country is too far left, which I disagree with. I see, Charles, what you're saying. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, Lovey. I was just gonna say. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The issues, like, okay, when Bernie Sanders came on the stage, when he finally got on the stage, he had to join the Democratic Party to get on the stage. But when he got on the stage, he talked about issues that neither party were talking about, that universal health care, the addressing poverty. You know, no party ever talks about addressing poverty. It's like they just want to keep people poor. And those
I
issues
agree.
took us out to they say he's too far left, you know, when he's telling we need to make the rich pay more taxes so we can take care of the social ills of this country, police reform, judicial reform, uh, prison reform. You know, this election, they started talking about it. Those issues started coming to play because people like to hear that. And, you know, a politician, they'll promise you anything. It don't matter what they do when they get in the office, but they promise you change. That's where you have hope. You know, they're telling you what you want to hear. You know, they'll come to your neighborhood to get your vote and ask what you want, but then when they get into office, they can't do what they wanted to do. Bernie doesn't have a majority in Congress, so what else can he do? I mean, he has to vote for his party, not that he wants to vote for things, but he has to vote with his party or he'll be voting for the other party if he goes against his own party. So, you know, we have to get more left-wing thinking people who want to deal with the social ills into Congress, but we keep re-electing the same people over and over, and you look at them 30 years ago, you know, and you look at them today, and you know they should be somewhere retired, but they're still in office and they're doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah, and I think that's why Cory
Yeah.
Bush, she gives me such hope because she beat somebody who I thought this guy has no business in office. He is terrible. He is horrible. And it took her what? I think she ran against him 3 times before she finally got elected to the office that she sought. That gives me hope. But I think, you know what? I think voters play a part in that. Voters have to hold politicians responsible for the promises that they make. And if they're not keeping those promises, then we need to say, you know what? It's time for you to go. And if that next person then that person needs to go. We need to get it until we get it right. Because if we, like you said, we keep electing the same people, they're not going to do anything until we say, you know what? That's it. I've had enough.
But it's the same thing. We also have to kind of step back and see that a lot of the too far left labeling and careful was done by the Dems, by the Dem elites, establishment, the neoliberals, and we fell for it. They openly courted the quote, Lincoln Project type Republicans, right? The never Trumpers. And of course, as we saw, typically there's a 3 to 4% crossover vote, Republican vote Dem vote Repub in any general election. In this case, 6% voted Trump. More of them voted for Trump than they did in 2016. So we have to watch what our own party does. And in my opinion, you've touched on so many important points. If we come back to why is it that fear of repercussions or consequences by Dem party leadership against a person we've elected because of their people first, people over profits, oppression ending positions and policies, why are they more concerned about the consequences of upsetting Dem leadership or getting on the wrong side of Dem leadership than they are about crossing their voters. That is a big problem.
Absolutely.
When they start to defer to them versus like, no, we will vote you out. And this is where our faith in democracy has to stay intact. And I know amongst a lot of true progressives, versus say there's 100 quote progressives in the or so in the alleged progressive caucus, and you look at them and you think, now wait a second, how are you in this caucus over here, which is also absolutely inconsistent with being a progressive? So I'll just use the term true prog, and what I mean is a grouping of policies that address exactly what you were talking about, is we need to take people out of desperation. You got to take people where they have real freedoms versus our every single day scrapping to stay alive. That is not freedom by anyone's imagination. And once we give the freedom that comes with having health care, having food security, home security, jobs, all those sorts of things, then there's a whole lot of people rising up and making real choices that may not have them kowtowing to a particular party only on the auspices of hope springing eternal, but they'll be able to say, you know what, we're going to walk over here. And again, touches on, do we need a third party so that the left, quote, left has nowhere to go. They're not going to vote for Trump or whoever's on the right, so we can treat them any way we want to treat them. We can fail them over and over again. And as long as we give them 3/4 of a crumb and the Republicans are giving them half a crumb, we just point to those people are giving half a crumb, and nobody stops and go, oh, wait a second, this 3/4 crumb is ridiculous too. We get caught up into that ratchet effect over and over and over again. And so it's whether it's the Green Party, whether it's the People's Party, whatever it is, I'm of a mind now, excuse me, that we need to somehow interrupt that narrative, that implication that we have nowhere else to go. Because if we stood there and said, you know what, we do have somewhere else to go, and we're going, and we're not kidding. And because Trump, insert, again, excuse me, whatever Republican you want, we just stop playing that game, and we do talk to people. Because I know when I phone banked for Bernie, they get out the vote calls in 2016, some people, would go a little off script and chat with you, and it would be, well, if Bernie's on the ballot, I'm voting for him, but if he isn't, it's going to be Trump. And I think, wait, what? And then I got a little, can you explain that? And it was basically, well, Clinton's saying she's going to be Obama. I voted Obama for 8 years. I never thought I would, and nothing changed. Clinton's just saying, I'm going to give you 4 more years of whatever that is. Obama said, my name may not be on the ballot, but my policies are. It didn't work for me. I don't know, this Trump guy, why not give it a try? But I trust Bernie. He's been saying the same thing. I don't care what, I'm not a communist, but I'll tell you this. If my family's hungry and I need money to buy food, if it's a communist handing me $5 for bread, I'm not going to tell my child, I could have fed you, but it was a commie offering me $5. I'm taking the $5 and feeding my family. And that is what you hear when you get away from the luxury. It is privileged for identitarian politics.
Yes, ma'am.
That is a position of privilege. But if we look at the haves versus have-nots and the poor, you find astonishing agreement if we leave names and parties and everything out of it. So I think you guys have touched on some, to me, pardon me for getting excited, but this is exactly what needs to happen, and we need to call out procedures. Like there's procedural things we could have done to stop the seating of Amy Coney Barrett. We could have delayed it or derailed it. Specific, well within bounds, ethical, procedural tactics that we could have used. And because, it'll never work ultimately, don't have the votes, none were tried. The antithesis of what the Republicans do with that stuff. We had the same thing when we had Charles Booker. We talked about that in head-to-head polls in the primary. He was beating Mitch McConnell. What happens? The Dems, Schumer, Pelosi put all their money behind Amy McGrath whose signature line was, "I'm more pro-Trump than Mitch McConnell." And she was losing in the head-to-head primary polls to McConnell. And
then-
even with the shoestring budget, Booker barely lost to McGrath in the primary. And of course, McGrath was trounced by McConnell in the general. And now we're supposed to pretend that never happened and just keep saying, we got to get McConnell out. Well, what about we had our chance? And it's the same to me with, as you pointed out, we got to hold him to account like getting a floor vote
Yep.
on Medicare for all.
Yep. Now, Maggie, I don't mean to cut into you, but I gotta cut into you. So we had to move on to our next issue. And I'll talk about
Okay, baby girl.
probably a little bit longer than
Sorry.
That's okay. So today, our first American, she received the vaccination that we've been talking about for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And now, of course, the media is finally on to what we've been saying for weeks is Americans are not willing to take this vaccine the way that they were hoping. So one of the ideas that someone came up with was, and Charles, I'll let you answer this first. They want to connect getting a $1,200 stimulus check to taking the vaccine. So in other words, what these people are proposing is that if you take the vaccine, we'll give you $1,200. But if you do not take the vaccine, you're not getting anything. What, sir, do you think of that? Because I have my own opinions and I want to hear what you got to say first.
I mean, God, you sound like you just gonna sell out yourself for $1,200. I guess how bad you need it, you know. This vaccine, I mean, they're touting it as safety, but you know, so what is it's safe? Is it effective? Nobody knows. Nobody really knows what it's gonna do because you still don't have enough information out of it because you still rushed it through so fast. So me personally, I'll pass. Okay, I'll be at the end of the line come next summer and see how it's working. Right now, you know, I'll just continue to mask in safe distance because it's worked so far for me. So even with the surges going on, that it really doesn't. I really don't care, you know, to try this vaccine.
Okay, Maggie, make it brief.
Okay, I would say I agree with Charles. I really do, 100% on this one. I'm pro-safe vax. Okay, I'm not an anti-vaxxer by any stretch. One, we don't know if it stops the spread, that you can get the vaccine, get it, have it milder, and still be spreading it. I worry about a false sense of security. And suppose all these people, I agree with Charles, it's like donating blood. You're desperate. You're going to get the vaccine for the $1,200 because you're dying of what? Hunger? Not having insulin? What are your choices here? That's not a free choice. Again, I go back to what's real freedom and what's an illusion, right? And desperation. And I was heartened when out of the UK came the reporting that I think it's up to 5 now of the group of healthcare workers that got the vaccine, the jabs as they call it, first, that they now have a warning that anyone that's had a serious allergic reaction to vaccine, food, or medicine, or, this important, or has been advised to carry either a rescue inhaler or like an EpiPen, should not get the vaccine unless the facility has resuscitation capabilities. Now, that's every person with an egg allergy, a milk allergy, a peanut allergy. If you read that cautionary remark that they've now put on it, that's a lot of people. And that was after the first jab.
Yep.
They have been saying that they expect from the trials to have the bigger reaction. Isn't that right, Charles, after the second shot? Because doesn't it take 2 jabs of it, 2 doses?
Right.
And
Right.
yeah. So it's the second one that's supposed to be problematic, and we've already seen a lot. Now, what's great is that there's reporting on this, but I'll tell you what I'll watch for. If they start reporting the adverse reaction rates in a different kind of calculated way than they do the COVID rates, right? Or they start attributing too much of the adverse vaccine reactions to pre-existing conditions, you know, as opposed to saying we should look at it here. Then I think all of us need to step back and go, hey, wait a second. These should all be calculated the same scientific way. One shouldn't persuade us it's a big problem and the other one try and persuade us it's not a problem, or vice versa. So I would happily step to the end of the queue. I'm with you, Charles. We'll wait and chit chat and let everybody else go first.
Here's
You
what I'm
know,
gonna
they
say.
should have-
Yeah.
Let me say something real quick. They
Yeah, go ahead.
should keep these vaccines in the hospital, okay? You shouldn't be able to get these vaccines, because they were talking about being able to get them at your drugstore or your grocery store, you know, send people out for that. Those vaccines right now need to stay right in the hospital. So if a person has an adverse effect to it, that they can get immediate medical attention instead of being out at a store or something getting it,
Good
and you
thought.
gotta wait, you know, because that time might be critical.
Absolutely, but I have
No,
a
that's,
different thought.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a totally different thought. Do not trash on me, but this is what I have to think about. I have 2 chronic conditions. And I don't know that if I caught COVID, it wouldn't just take me out. And it's a question I ask myself, am I willing to risk leaving here one way or go ahead and get the vaccine knowing that it may help, because the two chronic conditions that I have makes everything worse. Nobody ever says, hey, you have these 2 chronic conditions. It's a good thing that no, nobody says that. And so those of us that have chronic conditions, we have to be really, really smart. Now, thank goodness I haven't had any COVID symptoms. I mean, I take my temperature every single day, but that's something that plays in the back of my mind as a person that does have chronic issues, is how far I wish they had more studies with people with chronic conditions, because I'm pretty sure my doctor is going to be saying, hey, Tracy, you need to be taking this. And usually when my doctor says take something, I don't normally not take it. But this one, I'm going back and forth. So I'm with you guys, but then there's a part of me that says, well, I got this disease, or diseases. I better be thinking about this one. So that's where I'm at.
I agree with you that, but you know, all these questions should be answered before you take that, or asked before you take that
Absolutely.
vaccine.
Absolutely.
That, you know, do you have this? Do you have that? I have a cousin who was just diagnosed with COVID pneumonia, you know, but he had a whole bunch of underlying conditions before he caught this. You know, they're transferring him now back from Las Vegas, where he was living. He's going back home to San Diego. I said, well, you know, that's great. Great, just that they have a bed for you at a hospital in California with all the people that are getting it every day. So, you know, some people can catch it and healthy, and the virus can run its course and be done with. But, you know, some people have these conditions and it's just going to aggravate those conditions and make it worse. So, yeah, so those questions need to be answered. And as I think as time goes along, we'll know more about this, this have more information, studies that are you know, people collecting data, because I'm sure that somewhere somebody's going to be taking a vaccine that had probably, if not the same, but you know, similar conditions to yourself, and you know, you see what happens. You know, to me, it's like Pfizer and Moderna, they're just getting paid, okay? That's only the
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
right now
mm-hmm,
that are the
mm-hmm.
winners in this vaccine thing, you know. Uh, we'll have to see because these vaccines aren't free. You know, the government is paying for these vaccines. So, and I'm sure Trump making sure that big business got paid big time. So, you know,
Absolutely.
Well, and we do it anyway. Was it 90% of the research and development costs on any new medication? We front the federal government, irrespective of who's in office. That's the big myth. And this one, they tried to purport that's such a good point you made, Charles, like all your guys' point. But they tried to say that, you know, like it was some sort of charity almost. Well, what they did is do it a little bit differently. Instead of getting the research funding, a lot of private donors went, you know, including Dolly Parton and Bill Gates and whatever. But what they're going to do is get paid on the back end, like Charles is suggesting. So yes, they're getting paid is the big deal. And my question is, I know there's often too few Black folk in these studies. I know one of the people that developed the vaccine is Black. But here's my question: how many persons that had pre-existing conditions were in the trial? Aren't they? I'm unsure here. I want to really stress this. But my understanding is they were prevented from participating for obvious reasons in the trial.
That's what
Persons
I
that have serious.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, see, so no, I feel for you because I don't know what I do because on the one hand, you know, I just don't know. I think I'm with Charles again. More information is going to come out. I personally worry about all our wonderful healthcare workers, and I worry about, frankly, our elders that are in congregate living care homes, completely isolated. They have the best watchdogs, eyes and ears, our loved ones coming to visit, and that hasn't happened for going on 10 months, giving them these vaccines when there's no one around to say, oh, no. I know my papa, I know my opa, I know my auntie, you know, I know my mama. That is not how she is. Something happened.
Yeah,
And they can attribute it to whatever. There's really nothing that worries me, to be honest. And I'm not imputing nefarious intent or conspiracy theories. I believe in science, but you know what's behind science? People. You know what people are? Imperfect. There's unethical scientists. I know some research scientists who say, oh, yes, we've done studies and that rat was an outlier, wink, wink, remove the data because it skews my results and it's not what we're getting paid to find, wink, wink. It is. So I know that, you know, science is great, but I think the skepticism all of us here are evincing or is warranted. It doesn't mean we're anti-vaxxers, conspiracy theorists. It's like, hey, slow down a minute here. Like anything else.
Yeah.
Let's really give this a study. And you know, we also don't know, maybe Charles was thinking this too, we don't know how long the thing even lasts because they're finding that people that have had COVID and have antibodies, they can become infected again with COVID and symptomatic. So is this going to be a vaccine we need every 6 months? Every year? We don't know that yet either.
Yeah. And I think obviously they're starting it today. The healthcare workers are first, the nursing homes are second. But I was just reading a study or looking at a study that said that only 38% of African Americans say that they are going to take this vaccine. And that's the lowest of any racial component of the group. I mean, you have 61%.
Well, let me tell you, I'm amazed it's that high with our record of how we treated you. That's
Exactly.
just a fact.
Yeah, because I was like, oh,
that's a fact. Anybody that denies that or thinks that that's nuts or uninformed or ignorant is absolutely out of touch. With all due respect, I say that because we know what we did.
Absolutely.
Well, you know,
we
they
experimented.
need to go back into a lockdown again. You know, you look at these other countries and how their numbers have came down, but you know, you just look at the numbers here and they just keep growing and growing and growing each day. You know, even China, where it originated from, you look at their numbers. Their numbers is low because they went down into a lockdown and managed it. You know, the whole country was forced to do that. You know, because you know, I mean, well, they have a dictatorship, so whatever the
Right.
ruling party says, you know,
Right.
you're gonna do
But
it,
no,
do
that's
or
a fair,
die.
Yeah, that's a
But
fair.
no, that's a fair point.
we should have
They
had
weren't
a
half measures.
national, we should have had a national plan here already in place, signed by all the governors, reviewed each year. This is what we do if we have a pandemic. Because the numbers went down when they had that lockdown back there in, was it March, April? But then because the numbers went down, I guess they just thought, well, the numbers now, they're just going to go away now. And they didn't, because they didn't let it get down far enough, because people were still rebelling against the lockdown. You know, but you know, if you're gonna make a law or a rule, you got to have the teeth to back it up. You know, you start putting people in jail, want to have parties where they ain't supposed to have parties, want to not have masks on when they're supposed to have masks on. You know, until we do
No, I think
that and get on the same page, nothing's gonna change. These numbers are just gonna keep growing and growing, and they're just banking on this vaccine to reverse it. You know. So
I see kind of where you're going. I don't know if jail is the answer, and here's why. So if you put a person, our jails are already overcrowded as it is already. I mean, they just are. They are already overcrowded. You already have people in jail and not even prison. We're just talking about regular jail where those COVID cases are high. A nice hefty 200.
and we're letting others out because of COVID.
Yeah, right. They would get, you know, you'd have somebody coming in with COVID. You got inmates that probably have it. I say a nice $250 fine. And if you don't pay it, your driver's license gets revoked. That'll do it right there. That'll do it right there. Because putting people in jail, I'm like, I see what you're saying, but I'm like, because see.
Well, you know, that doesn't have to be the first option. But, you know, eventually, if nothing seems to work, that you throw it to people. Okay, so they decide, well, I'm not going to pay this fine. They decide, well, I'm going to still drive if I ain't got no driver's license. You know, how far are you willing to go?
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. You know,
but what if we,
go ahead,
what if we looked at it less stick and more carrot? Like, what if we said, like, when we looked at these other countries, the more recent surge, the United States and Europe were almost to the day on their surges, right? What else is different other than Trump?
Nothing.
Universal health care, and they paid them to stay home. So at some point, if our government's going to say, you can't make any money, you can't work, you have to stay home, you must give them something. It is impossible. It's like saying, I'm going to tie you to the railroad tracks, but if you try and untie yourself when a train comes, I'll shoot you. That's the kind of position people feel as though they're put into. Parties is a different thing there, right? But I think because of the inconsistencies, like no church for some people, and yet sitting right next to each other on crowded planes with only mass in another. It's like, that's when you see inconsistency, people that tend to just dismiss it out altogether. So I'm thinking I agree 100%. If we had done a complete lockdown, which of course we can't just do it federally, we have to go state by state. I like your idea of having the governors and a plan on board in advance, but then they also have to have agreement, we will pay you to stay home. We will give you insurance to stay home. If we want to compare rates, we have to compare more than just Trump, because Trump was not in Europe when they had a surge at the exact same time, the exact same levels that we had here. And the difference is the getting it back under control, the R numbers.
Yeah.
And so you look at what did everybody do differently? You get 100% of your wage and or 3K a month or 85% of your wage, and you have universal health care. There just cannot be skipped over in preference of because Trump mishandled it, which of course we know he did.
Everybody needs to get paid, not just people who worked or didn't work or
Yes, sir.
work.
UBI.
Everybody needs to be paid, and
Yes, sir.
to get that pay, they need to stay off the streets. Okay, that's just the bottom line. Everybody should be paid, but you can't say, well, I'm only going to pay these people who filed a tax return.
I agree. Universal, 100%.
But I tell people, if you didn't make anything, still file a tax return. You can file a tax return with zero. A lot of people didn't listen to that. A lot of people didn't get paid. This $1,200 though. This is still nothing. You need
Absolutely.
to pay people to stay at home, but then you got Congress up there. They're just sitting there trying to figure out how much not to give us. What crumbs can we throw to them and maybe satisfy the public? They don't care up there.
Absolutely. 100%. Guys, I got
100%.
Yep, got to move to the very last topic because it's itching. I thought this was gonna be short. It isn't. It never is. I don't know why I always say that, but it never is. Okay, so Maggie, we do this segment called Idiot of the Week, and we name our idiot and we tell very briefly why it is we think that person is the idiot of the week. So Charles, I'll let you go first, and you will tell me who you think your idiot of the week is.
My idiot of the week is the AG for Texas, Ken Paxton, who's under investigation for security and fraud, whose deputies under him sent a letter to Justice complaining about his abuse of power, and then him going out trying to overturn the election in other states and getting these other idiots to sign on to this lawsuit that the Supreme Court didn't even want to take a look at. That's my idiot.
Okay, Maggie, go ahead. Who's your idiot of the week?
Well, I'm going to have to go with Charles's idiot, but since he took my answer and articulated it well better than I could have, so thank you. No, my next idiot, I think, would be, off the top of my head, is the MSNBC reporter, Rule, I think is her name, R-U-H-L-E, who had Sanders on it. Yes, had Sanders on ostensibly, allegedly, purportedly to discuss the whole stimulus negotiation, and then basically blindsided him with, how come you haven't passed any bills in 42 years? Or it just became an attack on Sanders that was so outside the realm of what the interview was supposed to be about. It came off as so completely gratuitous. I couldn't, and the reason I believe it was a sandbagging, or that they planned it, is they had all these kind of graphics ready to put up, about it. That like, here's a graphic showing Sanders is allegedly useless kind of thing. And I thought to myself, are you not understanding yet that when you keep beating up on somebody so much that people know is doing everything he can for us in every way he possibly can within his powers, that it's going to have a backlash and backfire, that pretty soon, if you just keep saying, we're on your side, but you keep beating down the people who we really see are acting on our side and not just talking on our side, whether it's right or wrong, that there's gonna be a backlash. So I'm gonna go with the general category of the media sort of idiot of the week. And again, I would encompass the sort of histrionic coverage of Trump and its shenanigans becoming campaigning
let me
versus
say
just
something real
neutral coverage.
Charles, you
Say
got
something
questions?
real quick. If I had have been Bernie, my answer would have been, because I didn't bring my gun to the Senate and make the other senators vote the way I wanted them to vote. I'm only one vote, okay? That's basically why he can't get nothing passed, because he's just one vote in the Senate. And he's far left. So he's pretty much out there by himself. So
Yeah.
And he is the amendment king for a reason. The guy has gotten a lot done, like his VA bill and everything else. She just wanted to make him look like nothing, in addition to your excellent point, Charles.
Yep. Okay, so my dummy of the week, Charles took my answer. I know you're not about to like my answer. My idiot of the week is Joe Biden. How in the world did you get caught on tape saying what you said at the people of
Oh, gosh!
Boy,
Can I change my answer?
What did he say? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
You didn't hear the tape? I'll link it to you. Basically, it wasn't what he said, more or less. To me, I had a problem with his tone, because your tone to me, very, very important. He was very dismissive of the civil rights leaders that he had asked, that had demanded a meeting. Because they demanded a meeting with him to say, hey, you need to put more people of color in your cabinet. So he met with them, which I guess is okay. But I was like, do you know this? Somebody released that tape, and I'm glad they did. After I heard it, I was so glad that I voted green. I was like, thank you. Oh no, it was terrible. His tone was terrible. And then he tried to clean up. It was like, oh, well, some mess about it was taken out of context. No, we didn't take what you said out of context. So my idiot of the week, it's President-elect Joe Biden. I'm like, dude, sit down, shut up. Just let Kamala meet with the black people. I know that's tokenism, but you know, black people gave you this election, saved your behind, and this is what you do. No, my idiot of the week is clear. I was gonna pick those attorney generals because mine was it. But Biden is it for me. No doubt. He is the hands down. I'm like, dude, sit down somewhere.
Well, I mean, isn't he putting black people in positions?
He is, but the way he answered, and like I said, I'll link it to you. The way he answered it, I just did not like his tone. His tone was so nasty, like, well, I'm here.
Well, Obama pretty much did the same thing with, he didn't want to talk to Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson, those who were the activists during that time,
Yeah, but my show didn't exist then, so I couldn't.
They're moderates. They might as well be conservatives. They're moderates. They're towards the center. They don't want these left ideas, but I see, like the Department of the Secretary of Defense.
But like I said, once you hear the tape, he could have came back with a whole bunch of other answers, like, I'm in the process of looking at people of color. I think people of color have offered great opportunities. I mean, he could have came back with anything.
I'll listen to it.
Yeah, because I was like, no, dude, no. But
it's not so much I want him. I care for him. It's just that Trump needed to go. Okay.
Absolutely.
Trump is trying to kill the whole world except for him and the rich people. And I'm sitting back wondering, is Trump gonna throw his family under the bus to save himself?
Yes.
Or will he throw himself under the bus to save his family?
No, he will throw
himself under the
bus to save himself.
January 21, they're coming after him. And I don't think he's looking at 2024 because now he mentioned today, well, he might not be back in 2024. Yeah, you might not be back because you're going to have a whole lot of legal issues and they're not going to be cleared up in a weekend.
Yep. So Charles, I'm gonna let you have the last word. Remember, Maggie, I need you to stay on with me for another couple seconds. So I thank everybody. First of all, I want to thank Howie Hawkins for being interviewed with me today. I really appreciated it. I wish I had more time to interview him, but I know his time is short, so I tried to be respectful of that. I thank you guys for coming in here as usual. And remember, next week, the week of the 19th is our last taping for this year. So I hope to see you guys next week. Thank you, everybody. And as usual, remember
Also,
to like.
wait a minute, we don't have anything on Monday?
The 19th is the last date.
That's women, isn't it? Isn't
That's
that
what?
women? Is that women or is that for?
No, the
whole-
19th is a Monday.
No, 19th, the 21st is on Monday.
Sorry about that. I gave the wrong date, audience, the 21st. That is correct. Thank you. Let me check. Hold on a second. Audience, I'm checking. Because I thought the 19th was.
14th.
Let's see. Hold on a second. I'm gonna check right here. Oh, that's right. You are right. The 21st. So December 21st will be our last show of this year. We're gonna do it big. So, audience, pardon all the mistakes there because I can't keep my dates straight. But remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And please support me on the Patreon. I'll see you all next week. Have a great week. And it won't be Christmas week until the 21st. So I wish you happy holidays then. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye, Tracy.
Thank you.
Bye,
Pleasure.
Maggie.